In a world where celebrities roam the streets running with scissors and hookers shoot each other out in broad daylight, one man must figure out the conspiracy behind the $20 forgery scheme and stopping the Russian mob. Hey everybody, my name is BlakJak, and welcome to my review for True Crime Streets of LA. Let's hop right in. Nick King Wilson is a man with a badge and a whole lot of attitude. Nick is a suspended detective who joins the EOD, or the Elite Operations Division, which has jurisdiction throughout all of LA. The chief wants him to meet his new partner. She also wants him to start looking into the triad due to a handful of bombings that have been occurring in Chinatown. First taste of gameplay happens here, in the firing range, where we get to learn how to point and shoot our guns. Nick has a few handy-dandy tricks up his sleeve. He can roll, he even has a slow-motion dive a la Max Payne, which he can pull off in any direction. Aiming is quite simple because it's automatic, the game does it for you. And you even have a precision mode that lets you aim at any body part to neutralize them, or shoot at a critical area that kills them very quickly. Unfortunately, much like the rest of the controls, it's simple, but then has a layer of complexity that makes playing the game a tad cumbersome. The simple fine-feeling controls become overshadowed by the more clunky and stiff-feeling complex actions that you are allowed to do with these simple controls. The precision aim here, for instance, is a free aim system much like Max Payne, but it moves and acts as if we're playing GoldenEye on N64. It has like a weird snapping effect to it. Anyway, after talking to the chief in the firing range, we get into the car and begin driving to the precinct. What's a loose cannon cop without his set of wheels, eh? Well, we better put the pedal to the metal then, because our first foray into LA, behind the wheels at least, is a timed missione. Our goal is simple: make it to the destination within the time limit to progress. Driving is simple: you can move forward, backwards, you have a brake, an e-brake, and you can shoot at things while driving. It can be fun at times, but unfortunately, the controls are pretty stiff here too. Controlling the car can be a little bit of a hassle. Turning doesn't feel good at all, it's a little too sensitive. Like when you need to align the car down the road, it's best to just tap the stick in the direction you want to go instead of holding the stick all the way like you can in GTA. Nudging the stick helps keep the car going straight and not randomly veering the car headlong into traffic, although you will be doing that throughout the entirety of the game. The card also has a precision aim mode, but you control it with the left analog stick instead of the right one, and it feels just as stiff as the regular precision aim. It will come in handy when dealing with a few of the missions though. So, after barely making to the precinct on time, Nick meets his partner Rosie, whom he treats like hot garbage because this game came out in 2003 and not being misogynistic hasn't hit the mainstream yet. So, the chief suggests that the two of them go grab some food to get to know each other better, thus beginning the first free roam mission. You can travel to any part of the map and find goodies along the way to your first actual mission. There are random events that occur that you can handle as a police officer that happen on the overworld, whether that's stopping a vampire from stealing an ambulance full of blood, or stopping two elderly men from beating the hell out of each other in the middle of the street. There are plenty of optional events to handle in between missions. Doing these optional events rewards you with points. 100 points gives you a shield, and depending on how you conduct yourself out in the field, you can affect your morality. Doing good actions, like arresting bad guys instead of killing them in cold blood, earns you 1 morale point. But you lose morale points for doing bad things, like running over an entire sidewalk linked to pedestrians, or just failing at a mission. Whatever. Doing bad things also makes you lose shield points as well as their respective shields. I believe it also can affect your appearance. The more evil Nick does, the grungier and dirtier he looks in his cutscenes and in the world around him. There are also morality checks throughout the game that stop you from progressing unless you have a certain amount of good morality. This didn't really happen to me on this playthrough though, because I spent like 30 minutes grinding for points for about maybe 3 or 4 shields. But I ended up having about like 40 morality points throughout the entirety of the game, so like you don't have to waste that much time. Shields are essentially the money in this game. You can spend points at pharmacies to heal you out in the field, or at gas stations to fix your car. There are also parking lots that let Nick pick out his brand new cars, so he doesn't have to waste his time looking for a gas station. But you need to unlock the cars as you progress through the game. The other use for shields is in earning upgrades. When on a free roam mission, Nick can find 3 different types of 24-hour stores that will give him the ability to earn an upgrade. The gyms unlock new finishers and techniques. The firing ranges unlock new gun parts and abilities. and the driving range unlocks new car moves for you to use when driving. Each time you find one out in the field, it will cost 1 shield to attempt a minigame challenge that is based on the upgrade you'll be earning. If you fail at the minigame, you'll lose the shield. The game saves before the minigame, so nothing is stopping you from doing a quick reset and finding the upgrade again to try without using all your shields. Some of these challenges are really hard too, but I think the challenge mainly comes from the stiff controls. Well, anyway, back to the story. Nick drives his way through the dimly lit and somewhat fuzzy city of Los Angeles to a Chinese restaurant where he and Rosie end up seeing a triad member harassing the owner. The wackiness and over-the-top nature of this game comes through mainly in the cutscenes, like this one, where Nick threatens the dude, then throws a chopstick at his inner ear. This then sparks the first staged fight. So, the combat in this game, much like everything else, is stiff and simple, with a hint of complexity. There's a block button, a punch button, a low kick, and a jump kick. You can even grab enemies, which hardly ever works, and you can even pick up melee weapons. Hitting an enemy not only does damage to them, but it even lowers their stun meter. Once fully stunned, you can enter a complex sequence of buttons to unleash the over-the-top kung fu techniques. And by complex, I mean I randomly hit buttons until I win. The enemies seem to block everything, so I tend to just stick to throwing low kicks until I stun them, and then I unleash my fatal fury. Also, I love that some of the melee weapons, when thrown at enemies, stick to them. Like this hatchet! Also, I love launching enemies into the destructible environments, like the zombie where you have to throw them into the oven to keep burning them alive. Yeah, it's great. While roaming around, since this is the only time I can really mention it, you have the ability to shoot your gun skyward, which can threaten enemies into being submissive so that you can frisk them or arrest them. You also have the ability to flash your badge to display your overwhelming police brutality mindset at them. Doing so makes most of the enemies whip out their guns and start blasting away at you, much like in real life. After fighting the guy in the restaurant, he holds Rosa hostage, and then through a complicated set of events, Rosa ends up being shot. And you have to kill the triad thug that we just beat up. This concludes the first episode, allowing us to view an intermission bonus cruisins. That's just what they're called. The intermissions are just cruisin' missions, but they offer really good upgrades. You can choose one of the following upgrades. You can survive an onslaught of mannequins shooting tennis balls at you, which gives you new pistols that have more ammo or deal more damage. There are also the street races that unlock faster cars, which will be a necessity if you want to do the best you can on some of those time limit missions. They're kind of strict. And the last choice is surviving a small gauntlet of dudes whom you have to beat up in order to learn a new grapple move. Of the 3 choices, the grapples are the least important. I say start with the gun and then find a fast car out in the field to do the first race for like your first 2 intermission missions. Nick's starting car isn't really all that good. I tend to lose a lot of those time trial missions with it, as well as that first street race. I had a hard time with it. One thing I'd like to bring up about the upgrades before we continue with the story is how the driving gets significantly worse the more upgrades you end up getting. For instance, I like to brake by tapping the brake button instead of holding it, but because I tend to make turns while I end up doing that, I tend to accidentally do the power slide and power stop move, because to do that you double tap the square button while holding a direction. The only good car upgrades are the low shift and the nitrous, which increase the speed of any car. It turns a simple control scheme that is just a little clunky into an accidentally complex one with somewhat useless moves that you need to be a Street Fighter champion to even pull off. I swear, the only analog direction and button combination that was missing was a quarter circle turn punch to throw a fucking Hadouken out the window at some of my enemies. There's one more thing about the upgrades that I'd like to mention. They are gotten sequentially. It does not matter which place you visit, you will always get the upgrades in the same order, meaning the hollow point bullets and the nitrous will always be the last upgrades you get for their respective stores. Back to the story. After the little shooting, Rosie's stuck playing a more support role for Nick while he continues his investigation. After following a few dead leads, Nick sneaks into a Russian-owned spa, which triggers the first sneaking mission. Here, Nick can either sucker punch or murder guards, and he has somewhat finicky trank gun, which only has 3 limited bullets. Taking cover is also something you can do whether you're sneaking or shooting at people, but honestly in both cases it doesn't come all that in handy. These missions are probably the best to get morality up, so I would just stick to stunning guards because you get 1 morality point per knockout. The only issue I have in these missions is that I tend to have a hard time seeing things. The game's presentation isn't bad, but for the time, it most certainly is a bit foggy and a tad bit too dark. Grand Theft Auto Vice City came out roughly around this time period, and that game is gorgeous. It's vibrant, it has a cool HUD with pretty colors, the city feels alive, it has a nice lighting system. I don't remember the draw distance being much of an issue in that game either, but in True Crime Streets of LA, sometimes I'll crash into signs or cars that just don't appear until after I hit them. Since everything's a bit blurry and the controls are a tad stiff, it makes doing the precise driving challenges very difficult. The city itself is very nice though, it's huge and I like the colors of all the environments and set pieces. Some of my favorite places in the game are the sex dungeons, I like the office building, and I love the airport. Although a few of the indoor areas are very hard to see, I can't help but think that it was kind of the point. I mean, you are after all sneaking through places you shouldn't be in, or in like an underground crypt blasting away at zombies, so it's like, obviously you shouldn't be able to see very well in some of these places. But anyway, after meeting Chong and Rocky, Nick shoots up the place. This, unbeknownst to him, ruins the undercover sting that the FBI was handling. This is where Nick meets the agent in charge, Special Agent Masterson. He's kind of a dick. His role is to get in the way of Nick's loose cannon attitude, even resulting in Nick's arrest in a few of the bad ending routes. Masterson and Nick then begin to work together, sort of, in order to capture Rocky and this general character whom we've heard very little about. Nick actually has ties to Rocky, whom we find out, somewhere down the line, is the man who killed Nick's father. While searching for Rocky, Nick investigates a lead on a man named Agent Wu. Some say he's a legend, and some say he doesn't actually exist, but Nick knows the truth. He's actually a demon ghost who can summon dragons and affect the world around him. I guess Ancient Wu is kind of like an ancient demon poltergeist or something. Well anyway, Wu began working with Chong in order to learn how better to take down his competition. But after fighting said dragon and fire demons, Wu actually helps Nick find Rocky. Rocky's working for a mysterious general in order to forge $20 bills and to make millions. But because Nick has a vendetta against Rocky, things hit the fan when Nick blows up an airplane while in hot pursuit, killing Rocky and getting the Korean army involved. That's right, the mysterious general that Rocky was working under is none other than General Kim, a man whose whole purpose is to get his country out of extreme debt by forging the American dollar. After getting our asses handed to this somewhat difficult boss fight, Nick sets off in his newly stolen speedster towards the sunset. This game is really short, but there are 3 endings you can do depending on your actions, which makes this game super replayable. Every time you win or lose at a mission, you are given the option to retry or to continue with the story. And if you fail at a mission, it's not technically game over, it's just a new possibility for you to get a different intro movie or alternate mission. You even have new storylines, like Rosa being captured in a sex dungeon, which leads to Nick fighting Rocky in the middle of town square as a final boss. Another outcome could be following a lead into a strip club, which then leads to the Koreans taking over a massive building with hostages, and you fight General Kim on top of a skyrise. Outside of the 27 minor upgrades and the 9 major upgrades, there are 30 bones to be found throughout the city, but because the map can't be zoomed in or allowed to have markers on it, it's kind of a hassle to find them. Instead, we use our handy dandy cheat codes to unlock the Dog Patrol mission. Dog Patrol is a hidden mission you get when collecting all 30 bones that allows you to play as Snoop D-O-G-G. His car even has hydraulics. He plays just like Nick, but he has his own voice lines. The goal is to do as many side events as possible within an hour to earn the best possible score. You don't get anything for being top dog to my knowledge. Outside of Snoop, you are able to play the game as any of the NPCs by entering specific codes when naming a file. Some of them are funny, like playing as a zombie, or you can be like the chief, or even those like concubine chicks that Ancient Wu has. Just know that you need to hold both the L1 and R1 buttons when pressing any of the letters, then letting go of them in order to move to the next letter. If you keep holding them down, you actually end up triggering other things going on and you won't hit the password properly. Do that for each input, including the confirmation, and you unlock the skin. Other cheats are what you would expect, like unlocking all the cars, or all weapons and all abilities. There's even one that makes your car super duper heavy, which launches every other car skyward when you ram right into them. It's super hilarious. You can even change Nick's car colors, but honestly I haven't really noticed a difference. Maybe I'm just doing that one wrong. I don't know what I'm doing wrong there. This game was a surprise for me the first time I played it. I was expecting something based on like real events. You know, it's called True Crime, so I just assumed. But what I got was a really charming game about a loose cannon cop who shoots first and asks questions never. He not only fights demons and dragons in his spare time, but he also has the title of Zombie Hunter in his resume. This game may not look the best or even feel the best when playing, but I really did enjoy myself playing this one. If I were you, I'd just try playing this game in one shot, continuing whether or not you win or lose a mission. The arcadey vibe that it gives makes this game enjoy to replay in subsequent playthroughs. And even if you don't necessarily want to do that, you can watch every alternate intro and play any of the missions that you didn't get a chance to play after beating the episode anyway. The music selection, while being completely demonetizable, is a blast. The soundtrack is filled with contemporary classics from various artists. Everything from Taproot to Snoop Dogg can be found here. You can even turn off songs if you want in the options menu. There's a lot of freedom here, which is really nice. When I started making this review for the first time about 2 years ago, I even came to learn that this game is the first game in the series that would later turn into Sleeping Dogs, which is one of my favorite 7th generation games. For a first game in a series that ended on a banger, I think True Crime Streets of LA isn't that bad a game. It could definitely be better, and hopefully the sequel went in the same direction that Sleeping Dogs ended up as. I can't wait to try out Streets of New York someday. Well anyway, so my rating for Streets of LA will be a 6.5 out of 10. I still recommend this one, despite its flaws. The charming wackiness and the arcadey feel is worth a playthrough or two. Well alrighty, next time I see you all, we'll probably be taking a trip back in time. 1476 to be exact.